Young guys killing their girlfriends and handing over their eyes to a witch doctor because they think it'll make them rich. An organization that started at a university with the dream of freeing Africa from colonialism. Today it's a mob with 30,000 members across dozens of countries, and a school principal who poisoned his 5-year-old student and buried her under the floor of the classroom where she was learning to read. This is the dark side of Nigeria. A mother of 4, a widow, thought she was talking to a British businessman. They talked every single day for weeks. He was warm, attentive, thoughtful. He'd ask how her kids were doing. He told her he wanted to meet her in person. He was a 24-year-old Nigerian scammer sitting in front of a laptop in Lagos. She lost almost every penny she had saved, and that's the tame version of this story. Nigeria, a country of over 200 million people, one of the largest economies in Africa, and one of the highest youth unemployment rates in the world. Millions of college-educated young people with basically zero shot at a real formal job. And surrounding them, a culture that glorifies money, fast money, flashy money, no questions asked about where it came from. That's the world the Yahoo boys were born into. The name comes from Yahoo Mail, the email service they used back in the 90s to send their first scams. Nigerian princes with frozen fortunes, mysterious inheritances, business opportunities that just needed a small upfront payment. Those scams have evolved since then. They're more sophisticated, more personalized, harder to spot. Yahoo boys build elaborate fake profiles on dating apps, social media, investment platforms. They build relationships over weeks or months. They figure out exactly what the victim wants to hear and then they say it. And back home in Nigeria, they throw their money around without a single ounce of shame. Yahoo boys are easy to spot in their cities. Luxury cars, Benzes, Range Rovers, Porsches, driven by 20-year-olds who've never worked a legitimate day in their lives. Gold chains, expensive watches, designer clothes that most Nigerians could never afford, parties at exclusive clubs, endless nights out, all of it posted on Instagram and TikTok for the whole world to see. That showing off isn't random, it's a strategy. It tells other young guys that the system works, that it's worth trying, that the road to success doesn't go through college or honest work, it goes through finding an angle and running with it. Nigerian universities actually had to ban students from driving onto campus because Yahoo boys were pulling up in luxury cars and intimidating professors. That says everything. But there's a darker layer to all of this that most people don't know about. As foreign victims got harder to fool, better spam filters, more public awareness about scams, some Yahoo boys started looking for an extra edge, and they found it in witch doctors. In Nigeria, juju, traditional Yoruba magic, and other spiritual practices isn't some fringe superstition. It's a core part of everyday life for millions of people across every social class. Practitioners, babalaos, native doctors, set up shop in markets, neighborhoods, and informal storefronts all over the country. Some of those practitioners started offering very specific services to Yahoo boys, rituals that supposedly boosted their power to manipulate victims, to make the money flow faster, to make the scams work better. An informant interviewed by researchers back in 2011 described it like this: "Voodoo is real. I used it, but I stopped because I was scared of the consequences. With voodoo, the money comes faster. I have friends who still use it. They can cash out 2 or 3 times a week." The simpler rituals involved enchanted rings, cuts on the body, late-night incantations, creepy stuff, but nothing that hurt anyone else. And then came the ones who wanted more power. That's what's known as Yahoo Plus, or Yahoo Plus Plus. Rituals that require human body parts, blood, eyes, organs, specific parts that the witch doctor mixes into his potions to prepare what he calls the work, the ritual that's supposedly going to supercharge the Yahoo boys' scams. And to get those parts, some Yahoo boys made the coldest, most calculated decision imaginable. They get a girlfriend, keep her close, buy her gifts, take her to hotels, build her trust. And when the witch doctor gives the word, when the ritual calls for it, they kill her. Macaulay Desmond, Hamis Kelvin, and Norioda Inaiki were 3 Yahoo boys from Delta State. In 2019, they were arrested for the murder of Elozino Ogege, a college student from Abraka. What they said in their police interview, recorded and partially released by Nigerian media, was disturbing for how calm they were about it. They described how they chose their victims. They'd look for young women on the street, picking them out based on simple cues: eye contact, a smile, responding to a compliment. They'd take them to bars, get them drunk, and move them somewhere isolated. Then they'd kill them and hand over the organs to their witch doctor, a man named Robinson Obaharo, who would prepare the potions with the remains. Elizino Ogegi was their last victim. Onoriode worked as a security guard at her university. He knew her by sight. He reached out to her under the pretense of helping her with something on campus. When she showed up, the other two were already waiting. They drugged her, took her somewhere else, killed her. The university's head of security, Nosisi Benedict Uche, had been bribed with 30,000 nairas to let them through without checking. When the three of them went back to Obaharo, believing that this time the ritual would work, that the scams would take off, that the money would finally come, the witch doctor told them they needed to bring a fifth victim. That's when the police caught them. During the interrogation, one of the journalists in the room asked them directly, "Did the ritual work?" Desmond didn't hesitate. "No, the ritual didn't bring us money. We're still broke." They had killed 4 people. They felt no remorse for the crime, just frustration that it hadn't paid off. On December 31st, 2021, Jennifer Anthony spent New Year's Eve with her boyfriend Moses Oko at the Domus Passus Hotel in Jos, Plateau State. Jennifer was 20 years old. She was studying special education and rehabilitation at the University of Jos. It was the first day of 2022 when hotel staff found her body. Moses Oko, also 20, had already run. What they did to Jennifer followed the same pattern. Her eyes were removed with a fork, according to evidence presented by police, and other organs were taken for the ritual. Moses' family tried to protect him. They shaved his head and checked him into a psychiatric facility in McCurdy, Benue State, trying to make him look mentally unstable so the police wouldn't recognize him. It didn't work. He was arrested on January 11th. His father, who was a professor at the same university where Jennifer studied, ended up being the one who helped police track him down. Moses Oko was 20 years old, the son of a university academic. The same boyfriend Jennifer thought loved her. These aren't isolated cases. Between 2021 and 2022, Nigeria recorded dozens of documented cases following the exact same pattern. In Ogun State, 3 young men killed Sofiat Kahinde, one of their girlfriends, and burned her head for money rituals. In Edo State, a Yahoo boy identified as Osas killed his girlfriend, Ilahor Onyarosa, on Christmas night 2021. A pattern, a logic, a culture that feeds it. Why does this happen? The easy answer is monsters. But the honest answer is more complicated. Nigeria has over 33 million unemployed young people. A university system that churns out graduates with no job market to absorb them. A culture that worships material success and doesn't always ask where it came from. And a spiritual tradition that, in its most extreme and corrupted forms, offers supernatural shortcuts to those who can't find real ones. None of that justifies anything, but it does explain how a 20-year-old guy, the son of a university professor, can come to believe that killing his girlfriend and handing her eyes to a witch doctor is a reasonable strategy for getting ahead financially. That's the most disturbing part of all. It's not the cruelty that chills you, it's the logic. Nigeria's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission made hundreds of Yahoo boy arrests between 2020 and 2024. Videos of those arrests spread all over social media. Young guys in handcuffs, their laptops and phones displayed like trophies in front of the cameras. Nigeria loses roughly $3.5 billion a year to cybercrime. Victims all over the world, widows, retirees, lonely people looking for connection, lose their savings, their dignity, sometimes their will to keep going. And in some of those cases, on the other side of that screen, there's someone who also lost something. Not money, but the ability to see another human being as anything more than a resource for a ritual. Our next case is also about an organization with its own rituals, its own hierarchy, its own code of loyalty, one that's paid in blood. But this organization wasn't born in the streets. It was born in Nigeria's most respected universities. And today it has a presence in Europe, North America, and dozens of other countries. I'm talking about the Black Axe. In the last case, we talked about young guys killing their girlfriends for blood rituals. Guys operating alone or in small groups, guided by witch doctors, convinced that crime was a shortcut to success. Our next case is also about an organization with rituals, with a hierarchy, with a code of loyalty that's paid in blood. But this organization wasn't born in a hotel room. It was born in a university, with ideals, with a cause, and what it became is one of the most disturbing stories of how something good can rot completely. July 7th, 1977, University of Benin, Edo State, Nigeria. 9 students got together with an idea. Nigeria was barely 7 years out of a devastating civil war, the Biafra conflict, which killed somewhere between 1 and 3 million people. The country was under military dictatorship. Universities were one of the few spaces where young people could voice ideas, organize, push back. Those 9 students founded the Neo-Black Movement of Africa. Their symbol was an axe breaking the chains of colonialism. Their stated values: Pan-Africanism, resistance to oppression, solidarity among black people around the world. It was a legitimate movement, with legitimate ideals, born in a historical moment that fully justified them. 48 years later, the Black Axe, the name the world knows them by today, is considered by Interpol to be one of the most dangerous transnational criminal organizations on the planet. 30,000 members across dozens of countries, operations in the United States, Canada, Italy, Spain, France, the UK, Brazil, Argentina, the UAE, South Africa, and more. How do you go from 9 students with an axe on their logo to a global mob? The answer is the 80s. Nigeria in the 80s was a country in crisis. Oil prices collapsed. The economy tanked. The military government rolled out structural adjustment programs that gutted university funding. Conditions on campuses got brutally bad. Not enough food, not enough infrastructure, no safety. Into that vacuum, university confraternities, secret student organizations that had already existed since the 50s, grew and changed. What had started as groups for intellectual debate and student activism began turning into something else entirely. Confraternities started recruiting members with promises of protection and power. Politicians started using them as tools, paying them to intimidate opponents, rig elections, control territory, and with that political money came guns, and with guns came violence. The Black Axe was part of that process. What had started as an anti-colonial movement slowly, steadily turned into a structured criminal organization. July 10th, 1999, 4:30 in the morning, 40 masked men arrived at Obafemi Awolowo University in Ile-Ife. They were Black Axe members. They were carrying shotguns and axes. They stormed Awolowo Hall dormitory. They called out specific students by name. They'd done their homework. They knew exactly who their targets were. "Pharaoh, come out if you're man enough," they shouted. "Legacy, come out if your father raised you right." These were student leaders who had spoken out against confraternities on campus, who had called for them to be expelled, who had talked too much. 5 students died that night. 11 were seriously injured. Those detained confessed to ties with the university's vice-chancellor, the same one who had blocked previous attempts to remove confraternities from campus. The case went before a magistrate. The weapons recovered during the raid were ordered destroyed as evidence. Nobody was convicted, not a single person. That's what sets the Black Axe apart from a lot of other criminal organizations. It's not just the violence, it's the systematic impunity surrounding it. In Nigeria, the ties between university confraternities, politicians, and security forces are so deep and so well documented that talking about fighting them without addressing those ties is an incomplete conversation. Politicians fund them to win elections. Police officers protect them in exchange for cash. And universities historically looked the other way because standing up to confraternities had very real, very physical consequences. That's the structure that allowed the Black Axe to survive, to grow, and eventually to export its model to the rest of the world. Because at some point, the Black Axe stopped staying in Nigeria. It followed the Nigerian diaspora. Wherever Nigerians went, the Black Axe went too. The mechanism was simple. Members who emigrated to Europe, North America, or South America kept their membership. They set up zones, local cells with their own leadership, but connected to the central structure, and they adapted their criminal operations to wherever they landed. In Italy, the European country with the largest Nigerian presence, the Black Axe and allied confraternities control human trafficking networks that exploit Nigerian women in prostitution, especially along the migration routes from Libya. In April 2021, Italian authorities arrested 30 suspected members for human trafficking and digital fraud. Italy's anti-mafia and anti-terrorism prosecutor, Federico Cafiero de Rajo, publicly stated, "Nigerian organized crime has branches in almost every Italian region and in every European country." In Canada, police reported that more than 70% of investigated Black Axe members had prior criminal convictions, including the theft of 500 SUVs worth $30 million in 2015. In Spain, in 2025, the National Police arrested 34 suspected Black Axe members in a nationwide operation targeting fraud, money laundering, and document forgery. In the United States, the DEA and FBI have ongoing permanent investigations into their drug trafficking and cybercrime operations. Because cybercrime is now the Black Axe's most lucrative business, The organization that was born with an axe on its logo now runs what researchers describe as one of the most sophisticated digital fraud networks in the world. Coordinated romance scams, corporate fraud through compromised business emails, cryptocurrency laundering, large-scale phishing. The Black Axe is estimated to generate over $5 billion a year in global criminal operations. In July 2024, Interpol launched Operation Jackal 3, a 21-country initiative specifically designed to hit the Black Axe. It resulted in 300 arrests and the seizure of $3 million in assets worldwide. The investigators involved were clear it was a symbolically important strike, but it barely put a dent in the organization. 300 arrests against 30,000 members across dozens of countries. So what exactly is the Black Axe today? That question doesn't have a simple answer, and that's part of what makes it so hard to fight. There's the Neo-Black Movement of Africa, the official organization, which in 2024 publicly expelled 50 members connected to the Black Axe and issued a statement distancing itself from criminal activities. It organizes seminars, puts out press releases, and holds on to its anti-colonial origins. And then there's the Black Axe, the criminal network that shares symbols, rituals, structure, and membership with the NBM, but operates in the shadows. That recruits at Nigerian universities by promising protection and brotherhood. That initiates its members with rituals involving oaths of absolute silence under threat of death. That has butchers, literally, whose job is to discipline disloyal members. Europol, FBI, and Interpol researchers who have studied the organization for years all agree on one thing. The line between the NBM and the Black Axe is so thin that telling them apart from the outside is nearly impossible. And on the inside, nobody talks. Today, the Black Axe operates on every inhabited continent on the planet. Its members are college students in Lagos and traffickers in Naples, digital scammers in Vancouver and pimps in Madrid, politicians in Abuja, and money launderers in Dubai. They started out wanting to break the chains of colonialism with an axe. They ended up building their own chains and putting them on everyone else. Our last case today also involves a little girl. It also involves someone who should have protected her. And it also ends with a conviction and an execution. But Hanifa Abubakar's story is different from everything we've seen today, because the man who killed her wasn't a scammer or a cult member. He was her school principal, and he buried her under the floor of the classroom where she was learning to read. Hanifa Abubakar was born on April 5, 2016, in Nasarawa, a residential neighborhood in Kano, Nigeria's second largest city, in the north of the country. She was an only child, her parents' one and only daughter. In Nigeria, that carries a special weight. An only child, protected, the center of the family. She was 5 when she disappeared. She attended 2 schools, Noble Kids Academy, a private primary school, and an Islamic school, in her neighborhood where she studied Arabic in the afternoons. She was an active, curious little girl, the kind her parents described with that particular mix of pride and tenderness that parents have when they talk about their only child. Abdul Malik Muhammad Tanko was 38 years old. He was the founder and principal of Noble Kids Academy. He was the man Hanifa's parents had trusted with her education. He was someone who knew the little girl, who knew what she was like, who knew exactly how to approach her without raising any suspicion. And that's exactly what he used against her. On December 2nd, 2021, Hanifa was leaving her Islamic school when Tanko intercepted her. He told her he was there on behalf of her teacher, that there was something she needed, that he'd take her back quickly. Hanifa trusted him. He was her school principal, a familiar adult, an authority figure in her life. She went with him. Tanko took her to his house in Tudun Murtala, in the same Nasarawa area. When he arrived home with the little girl, he told his wife that Hanifa was the daughter of one of his teachers who was away traveling, that she'd be staying for a few days. His wife believed him. 2 days later, on December 4th, Tanko called Hanifa's family. He demanded a ransom of 6 million nairas, roughly $14,000. Hanifa's parents went to the police immediately. The investigation got underway. Authorities started tracing calls, looking for leads, piecing together the girl's last known movements. But Tanko had a problem he hadn't thought through. Hanifa knew who he was. He wasn't some anonymous kidnapper to her. He was her school principal. As the days went by and the girl started to understand that something was very wrong, when they tried to rescue her, when there was a trial, she could identify him. She could point him out. That, according to his own later confession, was what led him to make the next decision. On December 18th, 2021, 16 days after the kidnapping, Tanko finished his tea around 11 at night. He picked up the cup. There was a little tea left inside. He grabbed a bobo yogurt container, a popular dairy drink among kids in Nigeria, and poured the remaining tea into it. Then he added rat poison. He gave the drink to Hanifa. He waited roughly 20 minutes while the poison did its work. Then he waited until she lost consciousness completely. When he was sure she was dead, he took her body out of the house. He brought it to the grounds of another school he also ran, Northwest Preparatory School, in the Kwanar Sabo area, in the Rigachukun district. He dug a hole in the ground, buried Hanifa, covered the hole, and went on with his life. Hanifa's family kept searching. The police kept investigating. It was one of Tanko's accomplices, Isyaku Hashim, who had helped with the kidnapping, who finally talked. On January 20th, 2022, police arrived at the Northwest Preparatory School grounds. They dug, and they found Hanifa's body. She was 5. She had been buried under the floor of a school by the man who ran that school. Tanko's arrest was followed in real time by all of Nigeria. Images of police pulling Hanifa's body from the ground spread across every media outlet in the country. The case triggered a level of national outrage that's rarely seen in Nigeria, where everyday violence often passes without much collective reaction. But Hanifa's case hit something different. She was 5, an only child. She had disappeared on her way to Arabic class, and the man who killed her was the same man her parents had trusted to educate her. That specific betrayal, the teacher, the educational authority figure, the familiar adult, is what made Nigeria unable to look away. Tanko was arrested. Along with him, Isyaku Hashim, his accomplice in the kidnapping, and Fatima Jibril, a woman connected to the case, were also taken into custody. In his confession, Tanko described every step of the crime with a coldness that investigators called deeply disturbing. The tea, the poison, the 20 minutes of waiting, moving the body, digging the hole, the burial, no visible remorse, no emotional breakdown. He laid out the facts as if he were walking someone through an administrative process. The trial began on February 14th, 2022, Valentine's Day. Both Tanko and Hashim pleaded not guilty. The evidence was overwhelming. The confession, witness testimony, forensic analysis of the body, the reconstruction of the crime. On July 28th, 2022, Judge Usman Naaba of the Kano State Court read the verdict. Abdulmalik Tanko, guilty. Death by hanging. Isyaku Hashim, guilty. Death by hanging. Fatima Jibril, guilty. 2 years in prison. Tanko appealed the sentence. His lawyers argued that the court had made errors in evaluating the evidence. On January 1st, 2026, 4 years after Hanifa's body was found, the Kano Court of Appeals rejected the appeal and upheld the death sentence. Judge A.R. Muhammad was blunt in his ruling. The appellant failed to present any credible argument capable of overturning the conviction. The prosecution's evidence was solid and persuasive. Today, Abdulmalik Tanko sits in Kano prison, waiting for his sentence to be carried out. Hanifa's uncle Siraj Suleiman spoke to the press while waiting for the execution. What we demand is justice. Every day that passes without the sentence being carried out is another day of pain for the family. There's something about Hanifa's case that goes beyond the brutality of the crime itself. It's the architecture of the betrayal. Tanko wasn't a stranger. He wasn't someone Hanifa would have learned to avoid. He was part of her everyday life, her routine, her circle of trust. He was her school principal, one of the safest figures in a 5-year-old girl's world. When he approached her outside the Islamic school and told her he was there on behalf of her teacher, she had absolutely no reason to doubt him. That's exactly what he counted on. He didn't choose Hanifa by accident. He chose her because he knew her, because he knew how to get to her, because the position of trust he held in her life was precisely the tool he needed to make the kidnapping work. And when that same little girl became a liability when he realized she could identify him, he got rid of her, with rat poison in a yogurt drink, and buried her under the floor of his own school. Nigeria buried Hanifa Abubakar in January 2022. She was 5, an only child. She went to Arabic class in the afternoons, and the man who killed her is still alive, waiting in a cell, while her family waits for an execution that still hasn't come. This is part of Nigeria's dark side. 3 cases, 3 different ways a country can fail its most vulnerable people. Young men killing their girlfriends believing that a woman's eyes can buy them success. An organization that was born wanting to free Africa and ended up enslaving thousands of people around the world. And a school principal who buried his 5-year-old student under the floor of his own school because she might be able to recognize him. Which of these cases hit you the hardest? What country would you like me to cover in my next video? Thanks for your support, as always. See you next time.